Here's the truth about what's actually stopping one of the greatest independent hypercar rebuilds ever attempted. And when you find out what it is, you're going to feel genuinely ridiculous on Matt Armstrong's behalf. Not the engine, not the gearbox, not the carbon monocoque, not the electronics package that Bugatti deliberately engineers to be a nightmare for anyone outside their own factory. After years of tearing through obstacles that the entire automotive industry said were impossible, after sourcing parts that technically weren't available, Matt Armstrong's Chiron is sitting there, almost done, almost ready. Now I would like you to see the public reveal of the car before we continue. Now 2 pieces of glass, a windshield and a small pane above the driver's seat. That's the gap between where Matt is right now and completing one of the most audacious independent hypercar rebuilds this platform has ever seen. The car had taken serious structural damage, the kind that insurance companies assess, write a number on a piece of paper, and never look at again. The kind that even people who love hypercars look at and say, privately, that some things aren't worth saving. The logic made sense on the surface. A Bugatti Chiron without Bugatti's direct involvement isn't just difficult to repair. It's supposed to be impossible. That's not an accident. That's architecture. These vehicles are engineered from the factory with a level of complexity that functions as a barrier, not just to amateur tinkering, but to any independent repair that bypasses the manufacturer. The idea is that if your Chiron is seriously damaged, there is exactly one place in the world equipped to handle it, and that place is Bugatti. Matt decided that was a theory worth testing. What came next wasn't dramatic or fast. It was methodical. It was grinding. Every time the project hit a wall, which happened constantly, Matt didn't announce defeat. He announced a detour. Parts that couldn't be ordered through official channels got tracked down through networks most people don't even know exist. Components that looked unrepairable went to engineers who hadn't been told yet that they were unrepairable. Costs that climbed past reasonable kept getting absorbed because reasonable was never the goal. The goal was finishing the car. And slowly, through obstinacy and skill and a refusal to accept the premise that only manufacturers can fix what manufacturers build, the Chiron started coming back. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because that entire journey, the sourcing battles, the engineering challenges, the electrical nightmares, every piece of it has been building toward one specific moment. Not a drive, not an unveil, a top-speed run. That's what this rebuild has always been pointing at. Not just proof that the car works, but proof that it works at the velocities it was designed for. That is the only result that settles the argument permanently. And to get there, the car needs to be complete. The body panels are done. Pause there for a moment, because that deserves more credit than it typically gets. Reproducing exterior body panels for a Bugatti Chiron outside of the factory is not like sourcing a bumper for a Volkswagen Golf. The geometry is extreme. The surfaces are compound curves built to aerodynamic specifications that have to be right, not close. The tolerances are measured in fractions of a millimeter. Getting those panels manufactured correctly, independently, without access to factory tooling, is a serious technical achievement. It's done, which means the only things between Matt and a complete car are two pieces of glass. And here is exactly why that's more complicated than it sounds, because the reaction most people have is simple. Glass? Just order it. Find a specialist. Pay whatever it costs. Done. That logic works if you're replacing the windshield on a family saloon. It does not work for a Chiron. This windshield is not automotive glass in any conventional sense. It is a precision structural component engineered to function at speeds that most road cars will never see. At those velocities, the aerodynamic forces acting on every surface of the vehicle become genuinely significant. The glass has to carry structural load. It has to maintain optical clarity without distortion, because distortion at 250 miles per hour is not a minor inconvenience. It is a danger. The curvature has to be exact because the Chiron's body is built around aerodynamic surfaces that depend on every component fitting correctly. 1 millimeter of deviation doesn't just look wrong, it creates turbulence. It creates noise. In a car built for top speed, noise and turbulence are not cosmetic problems. And here's the part that reframes everything. Matt isn't asking where he can buy a replacement Chiron windshield. There is no shelf somewhere with a spare. He is asking whether anyone in the world has the capability to manufacture one from scratch to spec correctly. That is a fundamentally different question. And the fact that he's had to take that question public, opening it up to anyone in the UK, Europe, or the United States who might be able to help, tells you exactly how small the pool of qualified people actually is. Think about what manufacturing this glass actually requires. First, the geometry has to be captured. The precise compound curves have to be measured and modeled with accuracy, because you cannot estimate your way through this. Then those curves have to be reproduced in glass, which means heat-forming or cold-bending processes that have to hit the right shape consistently. Then the optical properties have to be verified, because glass that looks fine to the naked eye can introduce the kind of distortion that becomes disorienting at high speed. Then the finished piece has to fit the aperture correctly, because a windshield that doesn't seal properly creates water ingress, structural weakness, and wind noise at exactly the speeds where you can least afford any of those things. Every one of those stages requires expertise. Combined, in the context of a vehicle built to Chiron specifications, they require a level of precision that exists in very few places worldwide. This is not a job for a general glazing company. This is not something you solve with a phone call to a local glass shop. This is precision low-volume manufacturing for a vehicle that was originally built to tolerances that most workshops can't even measure. So what this moment actually reveals is something important about where manufacturer dependency really lives.